All right, we're gonna talk about working with that medium length layered shape, which is so popular right now. I think what's really cool about approaching shapes like this is we have an opportunity to make some choices to preserve length, to create space, to remove weight. We have a lot of different options. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna create a shape that's a little bit shorter in the front, longer towards the back, but has some really nice internal layering that creates a lot of movement and has a lot of opportunity for styling. What I've done to set myself up for success as far as sectioning goes is I've created zones in the haircut. I have two in the front, split right down from the high point of the head to the front hairline, right down the center. Then from the high point of the head, just slightly behind the apex, I've taken a section straight down to just behind the ear, right near the mastoid process. And across the back, I've then separated the top and bottom horizontally to help me manage this area. Because in the back of the head, we have this much hair. Front of the ear, we have this much hair. So we're looking to manage it a little bit differently to make sure that our end result is suitable, right? We're gonna start in this lower zone, just below the occipital. I'm gonna lock my tripod in place. I'm gonna work vertically. I'm gonna take a vertical section straight down the center. I'm gonna lift it and I'm gonna create a concave layer, meaning it's gonna be shorter on the interior, longer on the exterior. So taking section number one, right in the center, I'm gonna comb away the hair I'm not cutting. Always using the wide side of the comb for sectioning, the tight side for grooming that hair out of the way. So from a profile view, what you'll see is I'm gonna look to groom this hair the best I can from the scalp to ends. I'm gonna lift it. Now my choice of length is gonna be dictated by my end result. Now, if I'm looking to keep a lot of length, my choice of length might be slightly longer. If I'm looking to create a lot of movement internally, my choice of length might be a little bit shorter. I may change my finger angle. There's a lot of different options here. But for today's exercise, I'm gonna keep it fairly level to the ground. Now I'm gonna continue working vertically, pulling everything to section number one. So I've taken section number two. I'm gonna comb it into section number one. I'm gonna spend a little bit extra time grooming that hair from scalp to ends. I'm gonna lift the hair to my cutting line, check my over direction, and cut that section. Now, as we move, my stationary guide's gonna get thicker and thicker and thicker. It's gonna become more prominent with every section of hair I cut. What's cool about that is it allows me to really see my cutting line and my guide very easily, right? Once again, adding that hair into section number one. So as I comb that down, you can see that I've maintained quite a bit of length here towards the ends, but what I've done is I've allowed this shape to kind of collapse into the nape here. Now for me, I like to cut short to long. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stand on the same exact side, but what we're gonna do differently here is I'm gonna separate just so they have a guide in the center. I'm gonna comb this hair out of the way. I'm gonna show you what it would be like if I took this entire section in one. I'm gonna comb all this hair to section number one, spending time and energy making sure that's nice and groomed. I'm gonna lift the hair to my cutting line, remove my comb then, and cut that entire half of that zone in one section. So you have the ability to do that when you start using stationary guides because, once again, you're not moving hair around as you cut it, you're pulling it all to the same point. So we've cut this entire panel or zone of the haircut really quickly, and you can approach it in multiple sections based on texture and density, or in one big section if you can manage and control the hair. Now we're gonna move to this area right in the crown. We're gonna look to create a slightly different shape here that follows the head shape. So I'm gonna look to have my cutting line follow the shape of the head here because I want to maintain a little bit of roundness and have it still collapse into the nape here. So I'm going to drop my two sections here. Now what's cool about this is I'm going to use the previously cut zone or panel as a bit of a clue. Now, that's gonna allow me to make sure that my choice of length is suitable. And what I wanna be mindful of is my choice of length for this area, whatever I choose is gonna be the clue for my outline. So if I choose to layer this area very short, then I may get an opportunity to expose some of the neck through here if that's what I'd like to do. Or if I wanna make sure I don't do that, I wanna make sure that my choice of length is suitable, that I maintain enough length and density to cover it. Now I'm gonna pull out section number 1 here. Again, in this area. I'll turn and show you in just a moment. Once again, always using the wide side of the comb for sectioning and the tight side for grooming it out of the way. I wanna be able to see the scalp lines on either side of my section. So as I turn it, I wanna make sure that I can see my section right down the center. Now I'm gonna choose to lift this hair straight out from its base and cut it slightly longer than the hair below. So I'm gonna turn just the opposite, 180 degrees. I have my central section here. What's cool about this is as I pick it up, you're gonna be able to see my length start to drop out of the bottom. I'm gonna go about a finger's width longer than the hair underneath. So I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna go drop it out. I'm gonna follow the roundness of the head here. I'm gonna cut just to my second knuckle or just to what I can control. My eyes are always looking at the root of the hair. I'm only looking at what's in my fingers as I'm cutting it. By looking at the root of the hair, that allows me to understand how much over direction I'm using or not using, and how much elevation I'm using or not using. So section number 1, very, very important in this new area. I'm just gonna retrace my steps back down, make sure I've got it nice and clean, following the head shape. Cool. Section number 1, through that area. As you can see, my choice of length here at the top is hitting roughly about just past the occipital here. So it's gonna create a nice end result. It's gonna have a lot of layering, a lot of movement. Now what I'm gonna do in this area is I'm gonna pivot from the high point of the head here. So I'm gonna split this down the middle. And my goal is to comb every section as I cut it straight out from its base. So I'm gonna get this section singled out and I'll show you what that looks like. So as you can see, I've taken a pivoting section, so slightly skinnier at the top, wider as we move down the head shape. I'm gonna look to pull this hair straight out from its base. So if you were in the salon working on a client or guest, this would be an opportunity where you could spin your chair towards the mirror and check your elevation, your over direction. I don't have that luxury here in the studio, so we're gonna use the camera. Walking all the way up to the top of the head. And I'm gonna repeat, taking a small reference point of the hair that's already been cut. Comb half this section out of the way. I have a bit of a guide here, and I'm gonna look to repeat the same process all the way to that division line at about the ear. So again, combing this hair up and straight out from its base. Looking at the root of the hair, making sure that I'm maintaining accurate elevation and over direction. Now, if you weren't like talking through the haircuts, through the steps, this would be something you could do super, super quick. And based on texture and density, you could even implement a stationary guide somewhere if you wanted to preserve length and density in any one area. You could overdirect the hair forward or back. The length on my first zone is dropping out. That tells me that I've made a good choice of length to preserve that there. I'm gonna move over just a little bit. I'm gonna separate that Again, just taking what I need as I move forward. Straight out from his base. What should happen is I should be pretty close to my choice of length for my outline. Now, we've chosen to work our internal shape first on this exercise. If length was most important, I would cut the length first. But for today's exercise and the scenario we're kind of going through, we're looking at the shape being more of a priority. So you can see that shape already starting to build, get a little bit smaller below the occipital, but this allows us to maintain length and density here, so it's complementary to the head shape, right? Gonna repeat the same steps, just on the other side. So I'm gonna reestablish my center parting here in the back, comb the hair that's already been cut out of the way, and I'm gonna repeat the same steps. Now I'm gonna keep this at a bit of a profile view so you can see that cutting line and how it follows the head shape. Move that hair out of the way, combing the hair straight out from its base. Once again, my eyes are looking at the scalp area. I wanna pay attention to the elevation, the over direction. And once again, keep in mind, I am only cutting the hair I have control of. So as I walk up the head shape, I know that I'm making sure that consistency is key, right? We keep that same dedication and discipline all the way through from section 1 to the last section. Separate the hair. And again, following the head shape. Only cutting the hair I can manage. Always checking for my guide before I close my scissor. So as I comb, I do this little thing where I go boop, boop, and I check just underneath to make sure I'm in the right spot. Again, splitting that section in half, comb it out of the way. I really do my best to make sure that I have the same number of sections on each side of the head as well. I think that's very important, especially when you're practicing on a mannequin, working on exercises, because that's gonna make sure that you're consistent as you're working on a client or guest in the salon or in the shop. And again, split that in half. I got my last section on this side. Straight out from its base again. Eyes are at the scalp. As you get to your cutting line, move your line of sight to your fingers. And as you can see too, when we're working through shapes like this, I'm always mindful that my comb and my scissor move together, and I don't take my comb out until I'm at my cutting line. That just makes sure that I have control from scalp to ends. So there we go, we've got the back half of the haircut finished up. We've got it nice and layered, got a bit of movement in there. From a profile view, you can see how the shape is getting really quite voluminous towards the top, gives us the opportunity to allow some volume, but still create some softness and some looseness towards the bottom. We're gonna move into the front zones. Real quick, easy way to approach that. All right, we're gonna move into these two front zones here. First off, I'm gonna give myself a clue. What's important about that is I need to know what the shortest length is going to be before I start cutting the rest of my haircut. So as you can see, what I've done is I'm gonna go ahead and clip the back half of the haircut out of the way, and I'm gonna work just on the front. My first step is gonna be to establish my shortest length in the front. So I'm gonna take a small reference point right here at the hairline. Now, you may have some individuals in the salon or in the shop that already have some haircut history here, but we're assuming that this individual does not. So we're gonna take this small piece right on the front hairline. I'm gonna cut it just to the tip of the nose. That's gonna be my shortest length in the center, and I'm gonna use that to establish my layered shape around the face. So I've cut a small piece on both sides. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pull the hair straight forward, And as I work down towards the bottom of the hairline, I'm gonna start lifting the hair. So I'm gonna create over direction, and as I move down, I'm gonna create elevation. So we're gonna be using both controls at the same time. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this, and I'll show you what those are or how I would approach them. Taking a diagonal back section to just incorporate this front hairline. I'm gonna take a diagonal back section just to incorporate this front hairline so that I have a manageable amount of hair that I can work from top to bottom. I'm gonna pull the hair straight forward. I'm gonna look for my guide underneath, which I created, which I dropped. Here we go. My guide underneath that I created here. Now there's a couple different ways I can do this. I can blunt cut it horizontally. I can point cut it. You could use a razor. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. Today, for today's exercise, I'm gonna look to lift it straight out, and I'm gonna blunt cut it straight across. I'm gonna drop it. You're already starting to see this get short to long, and the reason why that's happening is because the hairline comes down. So I'm gonna pull that hair again, forward. Now, as I work down the hairline, what's happening is I'm creating elevation. The farther I get down the hairline, the more elevation I'm creating. So everything is coming to this stationary cutting line, but straight forward. So by cutting a straight line, what I've done is I've used the hairline to help me determine this little face framing area here. Now I'm gonna look to add the rest of the hair to it. Now, if this was a person with maybe a slightly different texture and density and you could manage it, you could cut all this hair at one time, which would be a really quick, efficient way to do that. Based on texture and density, that's gonna help you determine how you approach the haircut and how many sections you take. Now again, as I come down to the side of the head, I'm gonna look to comb this hair forward and pull it up to the same cutting line that I cut section number 1 at in this front area. So I'm using a little bit of a stationary cutting line, but I'm pulling that hair forward. So as I take the clip out here, what you'll see is we merge these two areas together and you get this cool, shorter layered shape. It's kind of in that world of a shag, which is so popular right now, but still framed around the face. So we're gonna look to repeat that on the other side. Now, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do this all in one, so you get to see what that looks like as well. Now, if I comb this hair forward, I'm turning slightly more. If I comb this hair forward to the same cutting line, I already have one side of the haircut done, so I'm gonna look to just carry that cutting line over. Again, combing the hair from scalp to ends, make sure it's nice and organized, especially when you're working with some condensed cutting sectioning. What's cool about this is even if I did grab some of this hair that's in the back, a lot of it's not gonna reach my cutting line, so I'm not worried about cutting it too short. So you don't have to keep the back separated from the front. In this particular situation, it does make it helpful, but it's not necessary, right? Again, when we're combing from the side, pulling that hair up to the same point in space I cut section number 1, cut what I can control. Again, as I'm working, if I grab some of this hair by accident and I'm like, oh no, I don't know if it's the right sectioning, what's cool about that is it's not gonna reach my cutting line, so I'm not concerned about it. I can pull all this to section number 1 and know that it's not gonna disturb my outline, okay? So again, on this side, we've created that little face framing layered shape that sits off the face. All right, so here's our finished haircut before we put our product in. What you can see is we've created this concave layered shape in the bottom that allows for a lot of movement, a lot of expansion here. We've created a convex layer, meaning that it follows the head shape and the crown. So that gives us an opportunity to really complement the bone structure. And then we've created a layered shape around the face that gives our guest, model, or client the versatility to move their hair around, part it side to side, have a little bit of space and openness around the face. They can even wear it in the middle and dress this out of the way. A lot of different options as far as the front of the haircut goes, but a really suitable, salon-friendly way to approach this medium length haircut.